And now we come to everyone's favorite part of the agenda, show me the money. There are many funding opportunities out there. So John and I decided to talk about some of the main ones that seem like they could really help out a lot. And I'm going to put in the chat box some information about some upcoming webinars and that are being put on by VDEM, because I think that that's important. See, that just worked. Because VDEM has separate deadlines for working with localities, and they can be a big help on the FEMA grants because they assist with the terrible benefit cost analyses and also with peer review. So there are FEMA flood mitigation assistance grants or FMA grants, and then their BRIC program, which is relatively new, the Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. And I don't know, John, if you want to add about your experience with these programs in any way, or how you think it might help in the area. I just want to flag that if you want to submit and use Virginia Department of Emergency Management's assistance, they're asking that all project applications and supporting documentation must be submitted through their portal by November 10th at 5 o'clock. So it's different than FEMA's deadline. So John, did you want to say anything about those programs?
Yeah, it's in the past few years, there's been a big shift with both the federal programs and the creation of a state program to help build resilience, right? Initially, the flood hazard mitigation program was to assist localities responding to a storm event or some sort of event to try to create and mitigate that problem. But there's been a greater focus, and with the creation of the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program at FEMA, they fully shifted their efforts to building resilience. So a big component of that is capacity building and planning. So their money is available for capacity building and planning. It's also available for projects. It's a large pot of money, and recently the current administration mentioned that there's going to be an additional $1 billion going into that program. So there really is kind of an all-out blitz to develop resiliency at the federal level. And with the creation of a state fund, that gives us another tool in our toolbox that we can use to create funding packages for projects. Because I think we all know that you can match federal dollars with state dollars and vice versa. So it's opened up that opportunity, and again, is focused on building flooding resilience and community resilience.
So for the BRIC program, it's due to the feds on January 28th, but as I noted earlier, it's due to VDEM if you want their assistance by November 10th. There's $1 billion with a B dollars available, and an important thing to note is that unlike some grant programs in the past, these funds may be used for capability and capacity building, CNCB as they call it, capability and capacity building activities, and also management costs for a project. So that's unusual, in addition to, of course, funding mitigation projects. And they emphasize the use of natural and nature-based features in projects. They like that. So that's helpful in an area where it's blessed with as many natural resources as the Northern Neck. So, and for the flood mitigation assistance program, there's $160 million available this time around, and they're due also January 28th. But again, if you want VDEM's assistance, it's earlier, it's November 10th.
I was going to point out that it's important to note that all of these funding sources they take time and effort to really think critically about what you're going to be applying for. There's obviously technical assistance that the PDC provides local governments in developing these applications. For instance, the Northern Neck Planning District Commission last funding round for BRIC put in an application to fund its hazard mitigation plan update, and that application is still moving through the process almost a year later, and we're expecting announcement by September. But so it does take quite a long time to really critically think about the type of project. And we've also, the Planning District Commission in the past has used flood hazard mitigation assistance grants from FEMA to elevate houses with our flood mitigation assistance home elevation program.
Great. So moving on to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, or NFWF. They have a National Coastal Resilience Fund that targets specific circumstances or needs or priorities, trying to reduce the impacts of coastal flooding. And they're trying to improve water quality as well and recreational opportunities. And they try to enhance the ecological integrity and functionality of coastal and inland systems. So it's kind of a multi-benefits approach. The pre-proposals were due April 7th for this year's round, which was $34 million. But you could be thinking about opportunities and talking to John about partnering with the PDC perhaps for an application for next year. There's also the NIFWIF Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Fund, which awards anywhere from $8 to $18 million a year through 2 different competitive grant programs, the Innovative Nutrient and Sediment Reduction Grant Program and the Small Watershed Grants Program. What's important to note is that their grant-funded projects have removed, they tout the fact that they've removed 1.7 million square feet of impervious surface. So that can assist with not just water quality, but also stormwater and flood control as well. And they also fund the conversion of fallow farmland to wetlands and the restoration of riparian buffers, all of which can also serve as flooding buffers in addition to providing water quality benefits. Again, for the Small Watershed Grants Program, the full proposals were due in April, but they are done each year. And so again, you could work with John to come up with ideas for that.
Well, about the small watershed grants and the Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Fund, the PDC has tapped into this fund numerous occasions. We did a living shoreline initiative a few years back where we installed some demonstration living shorelines throughout the Northern Neck. We helped the town of Warsaw apply to the fund to assist with its stormwater and bottoms project. And we recently applied to the fund to conduct a green infrastructure assessment and develop some land use planning tools around green infrastructure. And right now the chat's blowing up with other grant funding opportunities. Thank you, Bryant Bays with the Department of Forestry, Aaron Went with DCRCs, and Lowry Becker with the Soil and Water Conservation District. There's a lot of funding sources out there. And I wanted to back up real quick, Elizabeth, and talk about the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. Earlier today, Richmond County mentioned that it's going to be updating its comprehensive plan, and Colonial Beach mentioned that it's looking to conduct a comprehensive stormwater management plan. The Community Flood Preparedness Fund does have money for planning and studies, and I've had extensive conversations with DCR about the usefulness of that fund for our local governments and some of these efforts. And that fund is open to those efforts. So if you need funding assistance for those planning endeavors, this is another opportunity or another tool that you can use to get some funding for that. And then kind of thinking back to what Susan and Pat said about kind of taking the small wins to move momentum forward and not necessarily having to swing for the fences. You know, you don't need a big giant infrastructure project to apply to one of these funds. If you have something that's on your plate now that's a priority, you can find a way to fit that various types of funding or various funding packages to fund that issue that you have on your plate. Thank you.
Right, so you heard it here, folks. John's an expert. He's done these things before, and he's poised and ready to help with the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. I just want to add that there are 3 types of eligible activities under the fund. Projects, which requires a resilience plan, studies, and capacity building and planning. So capacity building is defined in the grants manual for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund as improving the ability of a local government through training of existing staff, hiring personnel, contracting with expert consultants or advisors, and other related actions that allow a local government to identify and mitigate risk and flood impacts. And by the way, local government means any county, city, town, municipal corporation, authority, district, commission, or political subdivision created by the General Assembly, as well as Virginia Indian tribes. So there are lots of opportunities there. This is the first round that they're doing now. In the future, they plan to do loans as well, but they're focusing on grants right now. No less than 25% of the money distributed from this fund each year has to be used for projects in low-income geographic areas. And they do give priority to nature-based solutions in the projects. So as John said, lots of opportunity in this first round. They're going to have another round and then a third round early next year. So
Two things, Elizabeth, if you don't mind. One is that's the importance of the continuity between the plans, right? And that's the importance of incorporating resilience into our hazard mitigation and comprehensive plans. We can meet that requirement for the projects for this fund if we build that into our comprehensive plans and hazard mitigation plan now. When we go to apply, we can apply for that project money and say, yeah, we have a resilience plan. It's all incorporated into our existing plans already. We have these elements in there, and so that will make you eligible for those funds.
absolutely. In fact, I'm going to copy right now and put in the chat box their definition of a resilience plan. And the reason that's important is just what John pointed out. They note that it can be more than one document. Yeah. It can be a hazard mitigation plan plus a comprehensive plan. But these are the elements that they're looking for in it. So that's why it's key to, another reason why it's key to incorporate resilience throughout your comprehensive plan and hazard mitigation plan efforts. So,
and the PDC is well aware that a lot of times these plans, although they serve a very specific function and help build towards implementation, the plans themselves open sources of funding up. For instance, having a hazard mitigation plan adopted by your local government opens up FEMA money in the event of a disaster, and having a resilience plan or resilience components embedded into your various plans will open up the Community Flood Preparedness Fund.
Quickly, I wanted to mention there was a legislative change this past year about the Virginia On-Site Sewage Indemnification Fund to provide for grants and loans to property owners with income at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines to repair or failing systems or install systems. So that's exciting too.
The importance of that is can't be overstated. Our low and moderate income households, what resilience means to them is having an operating septic system. So that's something that's come up time and time again in our discussions about resilience and developing residential resilience.
Absolutely. And that's an increased focus of this administration. The General Assembly created a wastewater infrastructure working group